On August the 21st, 2003, Toni Torres of Oklahoma waded into the Spring River carrying her 17-month-old son, Alex. She was also holding the hand of her 10-year-old Brandon. Investigators said Toni released her hold on the toddler and pushed Alex away from her, making no effort to save him. Brandon, the other child, was able to make it to the river bank and was found screaming for help. Alex's body was found submerged in about 20 feet of water, approximately 4 miles north of Twin Bridges State Park in northern Ottawa County. Toni was ultimately located sitting on the river bank. Keep in mind, this is the only image available in this case. There's no images of any children given its rarity. According to Toni's statements to investigators, the toddler was clinging to her as she waded into the river. Diagnosed with bipolar disorder, she told authorities when she was arrested that God told me to do it. She wrote, God shed his blood for me. All they do is ask me, and I will tell them the truth, even if it sounds crazy. I won't let people corrupt my spirit with the law. Under the space for a defendant's name, she wrote God. Under legal guardian, she wrote God. Toni Torres had a master's degree in psychology, and she once worked as a counselor for troubled youths. In October 2004, after this incident, Toni was found not guilty by reason of insanity and she was committed to a psychiatric facility. Toni had asked to be released on 4 occasions since November 2006. In all 4 requests, the state objected to her release. Adding further to the tragedy, in 2010, Brandon, the one who was screaming back in 2003, he died from electrocution. He was 17 years old. Brandon was under a house working on the plumbing when he was killed. His death was ruled accidental. Toni was allowed to attend his funeral. In 2011, she was released from the psychiatric facility because it was ruled she was no longer a danger. Her social media posts in 2017 show numerous faith based posts of God's forgiveness and forgiveness to herself, as well as posting help for addicts and her involvement in celebrating recovery. But then, tragically, in November 2021, Toni was shot in the head twice. A worker in the area of Ottawa County found a woman's body. The body was next to a pond west of 560 Road down a gravel drive. The sheriff's office responded and, with permission from the tribal marshals, entered the scene. They saw apparent injuries and worked to find her identity. The body had 12 abrasions, including a laceration to the tongue and a contusion to the left side of the head. Later that day, the sheriff's office took a report of a missing person. Her name was Toni Moran. They found booking photos of Moran and matched her tattoos with those of the deceased female. Authorities determined that Toni was shot twice, once in the head and once in the torso. Her brother, who reported her missing, hadn't seen her since 9:30 p.m. on October the 31st, 2021. She had been living with him since moving out of her apartment. She changed her name, it seems, after she was released from the psychiatric facility. Now, investigators learned that Toni was in contact with Jimmy Kelly the night before, on October 31st. Authorities went to Jimmy Kelly's home for an interview. He confirmed that he was supposed to meet up with Toni, but he fell asleep. He claims he called her around 11 p.m., saying it was too late and he would call her in the morning. Later that day, investigators also spoke with Shalana Kelly, Jimmy's wife. She says she only left the home that night to pick up her grandson and get dinner. Outside that hour, she claimed to be home all night. Jimmy and Toni became acquainted when Toni was in custody after the death of her son back in 2003. Jimmy Kelly married Shalana Kelly on September the 18th, 2018, 5 months after he himself was released from prison. Jimmy told federal investigators he was having a relationship with Toni that caused his wife Shalana to become jealous, and he had arranged a confrontation between both women. Shalana and Jimmy lured Toni into meeting them. The idea was to have Toni meet Kelly on a country road early in the evening of Halloween 2021. Toni thought it was for the purpose of using meth. Jimmy's life itself was filled with abuse, neglect, and trauma, including witnessing the shooting death of his mother by her boyfriend when he was just 5 years old. After his mother's death, his caregivers abused alcohol and methamphetamine. His sister, who became an alcoholic, died in a motor vehicle crash in 1990. Jimmy himself was convicted of murder for the death of Vernon C. Moyer in 1991. Moyer was reportedly spreading rumors about Jimmy's sister and claimed to have fathered children with his sister. Testimony showed that Jimmy beat Moyer with tire tools and nearly decapitated the man. He swung a jack like an axe, decimated his neck, larynx, and voice box. He then disposed of the body in a nearby pond. A few days after the murder, in 1991, Jimmy confessed to a co-worker and lamented that he had not punched holes in the victim's body and removed his tennis shoes so the body would not float. Jimmy was sentenced to 30 years in prison and was released on April the 30th, 2018, where he began serving 5 years of supervised release. Eventually, Jimmy confessed to the murder of Toni. He pled guilty to a reduced murder charge and was sentenced to a minimum of 25 years. He said he shot her twice, once in the head and once in the torso. Jimmy said he left the scene and later returned to burn the body but could not find it. Toxicology from the autopsy revealed that Toni did have meth in her system when she was killed. Shalana's case is still ongoing. What a sad, sad life for Toni. She was convicted in the murder of her child, but she was found not guilty by reason of insanity. I always find this verdict acceptable. Many times in true crime cases, we see how the perpetrator tries to get away with it, faking insanity. And in 99% of cases, this insanity claim is always rejected. Therefore, when the courts decide that the suspect is insane, I take it on face value. She lost both of her kids, then she was murdered herself. Regardless of who you think is right or wrong, this story is just so sad, and it makes me think, what kind of lives are some people living? As bad as this sounds, it actually makes me appreciate my life even more.
Court documents reveal more details about a northeastern Oklahoma murder investigation. 2 people are accused in the shooting death of Toni Moran in Ottawa County. They are 51-year-old Jimmy Kelly and 52-year-old Charlana Kelly. Court documents say during his interrogation, Jimmy Kelly revealed he had been having an affair with Moran, that he and his wife Charlana had met with her the night of her death. Jimmy Kelly says he handed Moran a gun and that she shot herself in the head. In grief, Jimmy says he then shot her in the torso. Jimmy Kelly is facing federal charges of first-degree murder in Indian country and using a firearm to commit a violent act. Charlana Kelly is held in the Ottawa County Jail on 1 count of accessory to a felony. A suspected St. Louis area